Remember the days when you drove down the road with the radio turned up and the wind blowing through your hair, the deep blue sky above, and not a care in the world, a field of grass to run through, warm waters to jump into? Between then and now, what tiny events happened that profoundly affected the outcome of your happily ever after? Maybe your idea of happily ever after is completely unrecognizable now and you feel it is out of reach. Or maybe your happily ever after didn't even measure up to how sweet reality turned out to be. Either way, you likely met someone, encountered something, or someone made a decision that altered the course of your life. The butterfly effect, a concept rooted in chaos theory, explains how small, seemingly insignificant actions or events can lead to larger, unforeseen consequences over time. In everyday life, this idea is constantly at play, as small decisions, encounters, or changes can ripple outward and dramatically influence future outcomes. For instance, choosing to take a different route to work, striking up a conversation with a stranger, or missing a phone call can set off a chain reaction that alters the course of a day, a relationship, or even a career. Often, we don't realize the significance of these moments until much later, when we can trace how one small action led to a much larger, life-altering event. The butterfly effect reminds us that the choices we make, no matter how trivial they may seem, can have profound and lasting impacts on our lives and the world around us. But how did small, somewhat accidental events lead to some of the most pivotal moments in music history? How did these seemingly random choices impact the careers and lives of iconic musicians, determine the members of legendary bands, and even shape entire genres? The butterfly effect has played a significant role in the course of music history. We are going to take a closer look at several instances of the butterfly effect, and by the end of these 3 short stories that are now a part of music folklore, you are going to see how impactful these seemingly trivial decisions were to the course of music.
Every day,
Buddy Holly had been touring relentlessly with the Winter Dance Party across the Midwest in 1959. At the time, Holly and his band consisted of Tommy Allsup, Carl Bunch, and Holly's protege, Waylon Jennings. Rising artists Ritchie Valens, the Big Bopper, and vocal group Dion and the Belmonts had joined the tour as well. The long journeys between venues on board the cold, uncomfortable tour buses adversely affected the performers, with cases of flu in freezing conditions. Buddy Holly was looking for a way to avoid the discomfort of the cold, broken-down tour buses that plagued the musicians on the tour. After a performance in Clear Lake, Iowa, Holly decided to charter a small plane to the next stop in Moorhead, Minnesota, hoping to get some much-needed rest and arrive early to prepare for the show. The plane had only 4 seats, including the pilot, leaving space for just 2 passengers to join Holly. What followed was a series of chance decisions that determined who would be on the plane. One of those decisions came down to a simple coin flip between Ritchie Valens and Tommy Allsup, Holly's guitarist. Valens, who was feeling unwell and desperate for a reprieve from the freezing bus, asked Allsup if he could have his seat. Agreeing to let chance decide, Allsup and Valens flipped a coin backstage. Valens called heads and won. This moment of luck, in retrospect, turned into tragedy, as Valens took the last available seat on the ill-fated flight. At the same time, another act of chance involved Waylon Jennings, Buddy Holly's bass player at the time. The Big Bopper, who was suffering from the flu, asked Jennings if he would be willing to give up his seat on the plane. Jennings, with no hesitation, agreed to take the bus instead, giving the Big Bopper his place on the flight. As Holly heard this decision, he jokingly said to Jennings, "I hope your old bus freezes up," to which Jennings replied, "Well, I hope your old plane crashes." These words haunted Jennings for the rest of his life, as the plane did indeed crash, killing all aboard. Another performer on the show that night, Dion, had a different recollection of the final events before the plane was boarded. Dion said that Holly called him Ritchie Valens and the Big Bopper into a vacant dressing room during Sardo's performance and said, "I've chartered a plane. We're the guys making the money. We should be the ones flying ahead. The only problem is there are only 2 available seats." According to Dion, it was Valens, not the Big Bopper, who had fallen ill, so Valens and Dion flipped a coin for the seat. In his interview, no mention is made of Jennings or Allsup being invited on the plane. Dion said he won the toss, but ultimately decided that since the $36 fare equaled the monthly rent his parents paid for his childhood apartment, he could not justify the indulgence. Alsop later recounted the coin flip as a haunting moment, knowing that his life was spared by pure chance. With time and survivor's guilt in play, it's hard to say which story is accurate. Either way, it was Ritchie Valens, not Alsop or Dion, that got the seat, and Big Bopper, not Waylon Jennings, on the plane that fateful night. The tragic plane crash on February 3, 1959, often referred to as the day the music died, marked one of the darkest moments in rock and roll history. On this fateful night, 3 rising stars of early rock and roll lost their lives when their small chartered plane crashed in a snowstorm shortly after takeoff. The chain of events leading to this crash was filled with seemingly trivial decisions, including a coin flip and an act of generosity that ultimately sealed the fate of these musicians. This event not only shocked the music world, but also became a symbol of the unpredictable nature of life and the fragile circumstances that shape history. The crash had a profound impact on the music industry and fans worldwide. Buddy Holly, already a pioneering figure in rock and roll at just 22 years old, had been laying the groundwork for what the genre would become. Holly's songs Every Day and Peggy Sue, originally named Cindy Lou, are now considered to have shaped early rock and roll. His influence reached far beyond his short career, inspiring artists such as the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and Bob Dylan, which have all covered Buddy Holly songs in recordings or live.
You're gonna leave, you know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when I die.
Ritchie Valens, only 17, was one of the first Latino rock stars and had already made a significant mark.
Well, now swing me all the way down there.
And the Big Bopper, though more known for his novelty songs like Chantilly Lace, was an influential DJ and songwriter. The deaths of these young artists left a void in the burgeoning world of rock and roll, and the music world mourned their loss deeply. Not just that, but if Waylon Jennings had gotten a seat instead of Big Bopper, then we may have missed out on Waylon singing about universal truths.
A long time forgotten, our dreams had just fell by the way.
And who's to say if General Lee would have cleared the creek without Waylon singing the Dukes of Hazzard theme song?
Someday the mountain might get 'em, but the law never will.
If it would have been Dion on the plane, then we might have missed out on the doo-wop style on his legendary 1961 Runaround Sue.
It's about a girl that I once knew. She took my love.
I can still remember how that music used to make me smile.
The tragic plane crash of February 3, 1959 became a defining moment in rock and roll history, immortalized in Don McLean's song American Pie as "The Day the Music Died."
Bad news on the doorstep. I couldn't take one more step.
It not only cut short the lives of 3 young musicians, but also served as a poignant reminder of the randomness of fate. The stories of the coin flip and Waylon Jennings giving up his seat underscore how a single decision can alter the course of history and highlight the fragility of life, especially for those living on the road as musicians. Imagine in 1965 a man wakes up in the middle of the night, plays a guitar riff, and falls back asleep. The next morning he wakes up and slightly remembers that he had dreamed about a great hook. After strumming his guitar and searching for the tune, he gives up and goes about his day, the idea never returning back to him. Luckily for us, the man recorded that riff before falling back asleep. The man in question is Keith Richards, and that riff that he recorded is "I Can't Get No Satisfaction" by the Rolling Stones. The song had a significant impact on music, capturing the mood of 1965. The gritty, electrified sound helped pave the way for the heavier, guitar-driven styles that would dominate 1960s and 70s rock music and its subgenres. The song became the first #1 for the Rolling Stones in the US, which helped propel their career at a pivotal time and establish the rebellious, unapologetic attitude of rock and roll. But if Richards had not recorded that hook and forgotten it, who knows what might have happened? In the spring of 1966, Jeff Beck wanted to record a song as a side project after his mounting frustrations with the Yardbirds, but what started as a side project would eventually lead to monumental changes in the landscape of rock music. Jeff enlisted his friend and session guitarist Jimmy Page on guitar, Keith Moon of The Who on drums, and when John Entwistle of The Who backed out, John Paul Jones joined on bass. All were frustrated with their current situations, and this became the idea for the initial forming of a new supergroup. This side project became the instrumental track known as Beck's Bolero, a track with a massive, electrifying sound. Moon arrived at the studio disguised in sunglasses and a Russian Cossack hat so as not to have his other bandmates find out. Mooney turned up, Jeff Beck recalled, and I never expected it because he was so scatty and you never knew if he was going to show. But once he was in there, we started it off, and I went and heard the playback and went, geez, this is the beginning of something amazing. You guys are not going anywhere. Page on rhythm guitar, me on lead, John Paul Jones on bass, it's done. And to cap it all, we had Glyn Johns engineering. This is the motherlode. And the next day it was all over. During the session, when it was mentioned that it might be a good idea to form a group in which Keith Moon replied that it would go over like a lead balloon. During the session, the chemistry between Beck and Page was undeniable. In May 1966, they recorded Beck's Bolero, and by June, Jimmy Page joined the Yardbirds on bass and then soon moved to guitar. Before long, Page joining Beck as the second guitarist, creating a powerhouse lineup with both musicians. Fans were ecstatic, and the Yardbirds were primed for greatness. In this short time, they recorded a lead guitar partnership, creating the avant-garde psychedelic rock single 10 Years Happenings, with Beck, Page, and coincidentally John Paul Jones again on bass.
Meeting people along my way.
The film Blow Up featured them both on stage together and displays a typical Jeff Beck moment of destroying his guitar. But Jeff Beck's short temper and frustrations with the band's grueling tour of the US led him to leave after just 2 days on tour. While their dueling guitars with the Yardbirds was short-lived, it had a big impact on their futures as musicians. As the Yardbirds began to fragment and soon break up, Jimmy Page saw the potential for greatness after their success. He kept Yardbirds manager Peter Grant and formed the new Yardbirds with needing a new lineup that eventually led him to being pointed to and recruiting Robert Plant, who brought John Bonham. Session player John Paul Jones, who had played bass on Beck's Bolero, also joined. Page eventually takes the idea that Keith Moon jokingly mentioned during the Beck's Bolero session for a band name. Together, they would form the band that became Led Zeppelin, unleashing a sound that would revolutionize rock music. Led Zeppelin quickly rose to legendary status, defining the sound of hard rock with their powerful blend of blues rock and improvisational energy. But Jeff Beck would soon be moved to take a bold step forward in his musical career as well. Jeff remembers the day it all came together. Let's not beat around the bush, I was pretty down at the time. I'd lost my girl, Hendrix had come and smeared everybody across the floor. It wasn't looking too rosy. I'd fallen out with the Yardbirds. I'm facing a Monday morning just outside London thinking, what's the point? It's all gone against me. So I went to the Cromwell Inn, which was my last hope of preventing anything silly happening. I looked up and there's a bloke in the corner slumped over with a beer and I thought, I'm getting out of here. So I said, hey mate, you all right? He looked up and it was Rod. I said, we're both effed. What about we go together and get a band? He went, if you mean it, then put your number on this piece of paper. Beck formed his own band, the Jeff Beck Group, with a young Rod Stewart on vocals and Ronnie Wood on bass. Beck's vision for the group was to blend rock with blues and jazz elements. All of this, the rise of Led Zeppelin and the formation of the Jeff Beck Group, traces back to that one decision to work on Beck's Bolero as a side project. What seemed like a simple recording session unleashed a domino effect, creating not one but two legendary bands that would push rock music into new and groundbreaking territory. The record release of Beck's Bolero was delayed for 10 months when Jeff Beck began his solo career after leaving the Yardbirds. Many musicians have cited Beck's Bolero as an inspiration. Guitarist Mike Bloomfield recalled that Beck's Bolero had a significant impact on Jimi Hendrix, who named it among his favorite tracks. In rock history, some of the greatest bands emerged from a single moment of creative inspiration, a simple decision in a moment of frustration with an unforgettable legacy. On April 4, 2009, Jimmy Page formally inducted his lifelong friend Jeff Beck into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and together they performed Beck's Bolero at the induction ceremony, with Page playing the original 1965 Fender Electric 12-string guitar, which he used for the 1966 recording session.
I've done other music after the Yardbirds, but anyway, somebody told me I should be proud tonight. But I'm not, because they kicked me out. They did. That's right. F*** them.